to the May Council Live. Last month, Veronica and Alicia discussed how Early Educators Leadership Conference and the Council Alumni Network foster connection within the ECE community. Our topic today is about reimagining the Child Development Associate credentialing process. My name is Abena Ocran-Jackson, and I am the Vice President of Credentialing and Programs here at the Council of Professional Recognition, and I will serve as the moderator for today's discussion. I'm excited to be discussing this topic with my panel of colleagues. The CDA has always been a strong base to advance career pathways for early childhood educators through high-quality, competency-based credentialing. And now the Council is taking bold actions to make the CDA process even better to continue to help rebuild the ECE field. With that, let me introduce who I have with me here today. First, we have our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Calvin E. Moore, Jr.
Hi, Abena. It's good to be with you.
Thank you, Calvin. Looking forward to our discussion. Second, we have our Chief Operating Officer, Andrew Davis.
Thank you, Abena. Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Andrew. And finally, but not least, we have our Vice President of Quality Assurance and Research, Beth Heeb.
Hi, Abena. It's wonderful to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Now that you've met my great colleagues, let's dive right into the questions. And let's start with you, Dr. Moore. To get started, can you tell our viewers a little bit about the CDA Reimagining Project? What inspired you to launch this project? And what are some of the goals that we are trying to achieve here at the Council?
Thank you, Abena. This was a really interesting time. As you may recall, this was a pandemic era project, the Reimagining Project. It happened during a time when we were trying to solve problems, innovate, get the credentialing program back up and running again. And so I think that was the inspiration. How can we be nimble enough to get going again during this COVID-19 era? One of the things that I focused on was really listening. I began listening to the staff before we began to officially launch the Reimagining Project. And there were really three goals, right? It boiled down to equity and access, listening to our candidates' perspective where the credentialing is concerned. We also focused on customer service. We wanted everybody to have the same experience with us. So establishing those expectational experiences for everyone, all of our stakeholders is really important. And then finally, technology. How can technology really help and support us in reimagining the credentialing process?
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. Beth, how did you determine your priorities for kind of leading this Reimagining Project?
Thanks, Abena, and thank you, Dr. Moore. I have to say this is probably my favorite project that I've had the opportunity to work on since joining the Council about 5 years ago. And I really am grateful that Dr. Moore really took us down this pathway, because I honestly think it's going to be extremely beneficial for the entire sector. So the primary goal of the Reimagining project was to evaluate our credentialing process through the lens of our stakeholders so that we could determine whether or not the process was meeting their needs. So in order to do that, we really needed to know more about who we serve and more specifically about their preferences. So therefore, the project was designed using a design thinking methodology. And that was done to capture stakeholder insights throughout the process. The project was designed using both qualitative and quantitative approaches to gather information. Specifically, we used surveys, held focus groups, and we conducted one-on-one interviews, and we analyzed all of the data in our credentialing management system. We analyzed tens of thousands of data points as a part of the project, and the data told us that our stakeholders are a very diverse group of people and they have unique needs. It also highlighted challenges that they experienced at different points in the credentialing process. So once we had all of this information about our stakeholders and their unique needs and experiences, the Council team set out to solve those issues that were identified. The Council had held a number of ideation sessions over the course of several days, and we generated dozens of potential improvements to the credentialing process. Committed to that design thinking methodology, we then took the improvements back to the field. We held additional focus groups where we presented our ideas to the participants and we asked them for their feedback. We then asked them to prioritize the improvements that they were presented. And that prioritized list really became the council's blueprint for creating a more candidate-centric process.
Thank you so much, Beth. Andrew, my next question is for you, and it's twofold. How does the Reimagine project make the CDA process more candidate-centric? And how high was the participation rate for the surveys when we reached out for stakeholders to participate in the focus groups?
Well, thanks, Abena. That's a great question. Well, first of all, we spoke to over 5,000 individuals through surveys, through focus groups, and feedback sessions. And so as Beth shared, tremendous amount of information gathered. Our main goal was to make sure that not only is the CDA process relevant for today, but it's also accessible, easy, and in a way that candidates can experience it positively. And so what could we do to enhance that? And I think what you'll find is we've learned a lot about the structures and supports that go into helping a candidate really from what they're experiencing, you know, their ability to take the exam, so exam accommodations, for support through the process, for you know, considering what realities they have to deal with in their own day-to-day lives. And I think as we continue this conversation and talk about some of the enhancements that are coming, I think you're going to find that the focus was all about making sure that this makes it a much more seamless process, with a goal of having more candidates complete the process and address the major gap that we have in the field of having more educators available to support the needs of our early childhood community.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And I know personally for me, a couple of stakeholder insights that kind of caught my attention were, one, I think we sometimes forget the various affiliations that people have with the council and how they're supporting candidates, you know, through the process. So just thinking about just the different tentacles and where people were coming from, and also how just positive the feedback was. I think, you know, one of the things under Dr. Moore's leadership is just our ability to be open to hear the feedback, whether it's positive or whether it's constructive. And so just hearing just how positive and just some of the suggestions that people had through the process, I think for me was really enlightening. With that, Dr. Moore, as a previous CDA holder, how do you identify with experiences of the current and prospective CDAs?
You know, that's a great question, Abena. I got my CDA over 30 years ago, if you could believe that. And the process was very different. And I think thinking about this question, I think about our history and how this is not the first iteration of the CDA credentialing process. So we've gone through changes before. If you remember, under Dr. Day, we first instituted a test. And then under Dr. Valor Washington, everything went online. I think now we're thinking about the candidate and bringing in their perspective in a different way. When I got my CDA in 1992, it was an LAT model where I was observed in a classroom, but there were members in the community and in the center, the CDA rep all came to meet, and hours upon hours, they made the decision about whether I was competent. Now the process is very different. There's an exam, there's a verification visit, the portfolio remains. I think it's still an anxiety, intense experience for the candidate. CDAs feel this enormous pressure to complete the process, either because it's a job requirement. For me, it was a job requirement, so it was a high stakes situation for me. And then candidates, I think, want to prove that they're competent to do the job that they've been doing. And so I think some things have changed, but also a lot has remained the same. And knowing that it is a high stakes environment and endeavor for the candidate, puts pressure on us now to really make it seamless, to really reflect the things that they want to see happen during the process, and all those pain points that they identified during the Reimagining project. We have to remain committed to resolving those and making it easier for them to go through the process.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. So Andrew, later this year, we will be launching a newly enhanced Your Council 2.0. Can you share some of the changes and benefits of this new platform, and what do you think that people will be most excited about?
Well, the platform really is a part of the entire reimagining process. So, as we talk about the enhancements to the platform, they're all directly related to enhancements that are taking place elsewhere. And just recalling what Dr. Moore just said about all of the innovations that have happened over the years, one of the things that we've always been trying to address as an organization is the fact that this process was never really intended to scale. We've been trying to chase the promise of how do we get this to scale in a way that it serves the number of people who actually need what this credential offers. And so in endeavoring to not only make it more seamless, it allows for us to more seamlessly handle the volume that comes with it. But with that, though, there are 5 points of innovation that are included in this. The first one, and by the way, all of these things are going to happen in various phases, but here's where we're going. The first one is we want everyone to start the process with us. If there are people who are viewing this that have had experiences in the past with our call center, one of the things that we found is that there's been an inconsistency of information that's shared with candidates because they typically don't start the process with us. They're starting the process with one of the thousands of training providers that are out there that support CDA training. And so we want to make sure that everyone not only gets the same information, but when they do, it's consistent, it's the right information, and it leads to less confusion later on in the process. Second thing is that we've found that even in cases today where we've got people who lead cohorts of people through the CDA process, even those people who have interacted with our system 20 plus times still have questions, still aren't clear on how to do that. So our new platform is going to be much more user-friendly. It's going to be streamlined in a way that makes it much more intuitive. It kind of is a little ironic that in 2024, you can have an online system and a call center that are both inundated with a tremendous amount of questions. And we really want to make it such that it is intuitive in the way that you would expect a system to be in this day and age. The third is that we are making some updates to the way that we support training providers. And while some of these things won't happen immediately, we are anticipating rolling out a set of standards that will help us shore up the floor of the minimum levels of quality that we expect from training providers to offer. But in addition to that, we want to introduce some transparency, not only transparency to the completion rates of people who are doing CDA courses, but also transparency to those candidates who are completing the CDA process, who's passed the exam, they can then share that information more publicly so that not only will candidates have the opportunity to see how well these training providers have done with candidates in the past, but then we'll also be able to see just general data around efficacy. Are we able to pinpoint areas where there are roadblocks or bottlenecks that can actually help us enhance how we support candidates through the process going forward? So a lot more transparency. We've also introduced some exam updates. So not only the process of reviewing the questions, the items to make sure that they're effective, but we've also increased the amount of time. And this is a thing that has also taken place already. So we're rolling out a slightly longer exam as an accommodation. I shouldn't actually say accommodation, but as an enhancement to support the identified needs from our candidates. We also are putting in place a process where candidates will take the exam first. So whereas before there was the option to have your verification visit or the exam, depending on what your calendar lined up, we're going to make sure everyone takes the exam first. And these are things that we found to be more consistent with positive results for not only the candidate, but for everyone. And then finally, we are exploring new systems of how we conduct observations. So we, some might be familiar with the process of virtual verification visits. We're going to make that process more integrated as well, not only how you choose when that happens, but then the flexibility in having that done virtually as well. So a lot of these things are a tremendous amount of change that we're anticipating happening in a relatively short period of time when you think about the lifespan of the CDA and the lifespan of the council. But I think they're necessary because while right now we are issuing, roughly 50,000, close to 50,000 credentials a year, we know that the need is so much greater than that. And we want to make sure that we're in a position to grow that as the need continues to grow.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Beth, can you talk to us about some of the reactions that you've received or that have been shared with you from staff so far about the Reimagining project?
Sure, Abena, and thank you, Andrew, for that explanation and overview of a number of the fairly major changes that we're making to the credentialing process. So since the conclusion of the Reimagining project, I've had the opportunity to share the process that we went through with a number of different stakeholder groups. And, the feedback has always been largely very positive. People are really impressed with how thoughtful of an approach we took and how intentional we were in ensuring that we were engaging with all of our constituents as we sought to find a way to improve our credentialing process to make it more accessible. Kind of on that note, our stakeholders have always been very willing to help us, and they continue to be. And so, as Andrew mentioned earlier, we had during the original study over 5,000 participants share their voice. And at this point in the work, we're building out the improvements that were prioritized by our stakeholders. And the primary opportunity for involvement now is to help with the testing of what we've built. And so very recently, we sent out an invitation to folks to see if they would be interested in volunteering to help us test our solutions. And over almost 1,655 individuals raised their hand and said, yes, please, I would love to help you test, put me on your list, which is just incredible. And so we're currently in the process of designing our testing sessions, and those will take place this summer. So we're really excited. I know council staff are excited to, get in there and play around with the system, but they're just equally as excited about learning from and watching our stakeholders, our candidates and PD specialists and training organization partners and institutions of higher education partners get in there and use the system as well. And so more to come, but so far the feedback has been very positive, and we're hoping that the result of the sessions this summer obviously will take into account all the feedback that we receive during those sessions and make some improvements to the final before the product is finalized and shared with everyone. But we're very much looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Beth. And Andrew, I know we've all mentioned just the positive aspects of this project, from the stakeholders to the feedback, but can you talk to us about any roadblocks that we faced in trying to implement this project?
Yeah, Abena, so are you trying to ask, like, in a project of this scope, could anything possibly go wrong? Yes, but in reality, the roadblocks are not really roadblocks, or just more so challenges along the way. One of them is, can we think large enough? what we're thinking about and how we're trying to solve this is addressing problems that meet at the intersection of technology, as Dr. Moore said earlier, and the responsiveness to what the field is asking for. But are we thinking about it in the right way? Can we anticipate tomorrow's problems? Can we think beyond just addressing yesterday's deficits and really anticipate what's going to come in the future, so that by the time we build a new system, it's not already obsolete? So how do we really project ourselves and cast ourselves into the future to really think that way about how we address problems? In addition to that, there's always the concern of realizing that there's such an immense responsibility that we have, in the role that we play in the field, that we don't want to jeopardize anything that we've done to build to where we are. And we also want to make sure that we're incredibly careful about all of these new changes that come about as a part of this process. So, I think one of the other challenges was the speed with which everything seems to be happening. So if we go back to when the Reimagining report was first done, and then we think about the recommendations that came from it, the actions taken on those recommendations, and then the things we learn in the process of trying to implement those recommendations, and are those connected to the things based on the new learning that we have? It's how can we keep up with our own speed of learning, of innovating, and making sure all of those pieces tie together to deliver a wonderful and useful end product. But I would say at the end of the day, one of the things that we're really committed to is just consistent innovation, and we've got the right people on the team to do it. I'm so impressed by everyone on at the council, in the way that not only are we working to solve those problems, but challenging ourselves to think about what's coming next, and what the future holds for us, and then what could be. So, doing all of those things simultaneously and trying to hit a deadline is incredibly challenging, but it's not a task that we're not up to. And I'm really proud of the way that we're seeing that through.
Thank you, Andrew. So, Dr. Moore, some of our viewers might say, wonderful, the council is updating their technology. They're going to make it smoother, easier for candidates to go through the process. But at the end of the day, how do you think the Reimagine project will contribute to the early care and education profession as a whole?
That's a great question. And I would just start and remind all of our listeners that the council has been contributing to the field of early childhood education for over 40 years. I mean, we've been administering the CDA for that long. And I think as a national credentialing organization, credentialing matters. And contributing to that in a really thoughtful way around competency-based credentialing has been important our entire existence. So we have these national standards. Our national CDA standards are really important. It's a seminal body of work. I view it as a gift to the field. Those 6 goals and those 13 functional areas, they mean something now after 50 years of being in existence. And I think we're building upon that by making the credentialing process more equitable and broadening the access to credentialing to meet the demand that Andrew was talking about, but also to respect all of those contributors that Beth mentioned. The other thing that I would say is that I really believe that the council has a role to play in unifying our field around our standards, but also the fact that our standards are aligned with NAEYC's professional standards and with the power to the profession, the unifying framework. I think that there is a lot to unpack where all the work is concerned at the council. And I'm here to do that. And I'm so proud of our team and how they're launching this new product into the marketplace. And I think as a result of that, people will begin to pay attention to the legacy of the council and the great work that we're doing here. And I'm proud of that work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. So as we close out this episode of CounciLIVE, is there anything else that each one of you would like to share or add about the Reimagining project and just how overall it'll impact the future of the council and the CDA? And you don't have to answer in any particular order, so whoever wants to go first, please feel free.
Thanks, Abena. If you don't mind, I'll kick us off. So I just want to say that the council really has a long history of being at the forefront of supporting the diverse needs of educators in our sector, and more importantly, promoting equity and inclusion in the field. And I feel like this project is just the latest example of that commitment. we really want any individual who loves working with young children and can competently demonstrate the principles outlined in the CDA National Competency Standards to be credentialed. We want them to achieve, this distinction of earning a CDA. And we understand it's our responsibility to make sure that the credentialing process really fosters people's ability to be successful. And so to that end, the changes that are going to result or have resulted out of the reimagining process are really designed to support educators, to support their various learning styles, their language needs, their busy schedules. And so I feel like these changes that folks will have an opportunity to explore later this year are really going to very positively impact the sector, will create better access for anyone who's interested in receiving a CDA. So I'm very excited about that.
If I could just piggyback on what Beth just shared, I think that, yes, this is a critical step in the direction of how we support entry-level early childhood educators. However, it's not a silver bullet, right? Like this is a part of an answer to a massive problem. We know that even if we were to say that early childhood education was a public good and everything was funded at the level that we want, there's still a lot of things to figure out, like if we wanted to have a nationally recognized credential, which, by the way, this one would be a great place to start. But if we wanted to do that, how would we operationalize that and get that going? And so we know also that we bring together these two wonderful worlds, the world of early childhood education and the world of credentialing, in a way that neither world seems to know much about the other. And while there's a tremendous amount of influence from the higher ed community, which is so valuable and so critical, the role of credentialing really is unique. And so I really relish the opportunity for us to demonstrate how that can impact the needs of the field and really deliver on the promise, that initial vision of what the CDA was supposed to represent. But it doesn't just stop there. And so I'm if nothing else, the biggest takeaway would be that the CDA is not a relic of the past that we're trying to hold on to. It's an active, dynamic, relevant, responsive credential. And to the extent that the field needs more in the form of a credential, the council as a partner, as a dynamic organization, is here and ready to step up to that task, not only the operationalizing of it, but also the conceptualization and the development of it. And so that's what I'm really excited about where we are. It's a wonderful time to be working at the council. It's a wonderful time for us to be able to contribute to the field. So I'm really, really excited about what the future holds.
So, Abena, you remember the memo that I wrote that started all of this, now, next, new, where we're living it at the council, right? We're thinking about all the problems that we're having to solve and that we face right now in the present. But we're also thinking about what's next, right? What's next for the council? What's next for the CDA? What's next for this body of work that we cradle here at the council? But I'm so proud to say to your listeners that we are coming up with something new and exciting. I hope that it's going to change and revolutionize credentialing, and it's going to mean a whole lot to CDA aspirants and CDA holders across the country and indeed the world. And that is an exciting thing to contemplate. And as Andrew just said, it's a wonderful time to be at the council. I'm so thankful to Beth and her team for leading us through the Reimagining project. And I'm proud of the enormous work that all of us at the council have been doing as we reimagine this credentialing platform. So I'm looking forward to the future, right? And looking forward to all the things that we're going to accomplish in the next 5 years. So thank you for this time of sharing.
Well, thank you, number one, to everybody who's joined us on this particular topic. Please help me in thanking my esteemed colleagues in our panel today, starting with Beth Heeb, Andrew Davis, and Dr. Calvin Moore. I hope you guys gain some insights into what we are invested in and our continued dedication to supporting the ECE field as an organization. We look forward to seeing you at our next month's episode of CounciLIVE. So again, thank you for joining us.